This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN.
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
Before we jump into televisions and save cute anime girls, let's take a few moments to talk about Surfshark VPN. In our world of internet backlash and danger beyond the keyboard, it's a necessity that you take care of yourselves. Whether you're surfing the net to buy the goods from Tanaka's totally credible shops, or that figurine that would make your mother shake her head in disgust, you want to take care to not rip off your mask of anonymity like some ball-brained phantom thief. That's where Surfshark VPN comes into play. That's right, Surfshark VPN, a VPN service that'll hide your precious internet info from the prying eyes of unwanted guests and allow you to access region-locked content. Is your paranoia actually true that our government overlords are secretly trying to dig up dirt on you so they can thrust you in some interdimensional overlord's Ponzi scheme? Don't worry, just summon your persona, Surfshark VPN, and you'll be able to tell those nasty FBI agents to... You want to watch a show on Netflix but can't because you haven't unlocked them in your compendium, and the only thing you get to see is a sign saying, "Moron, I am you and I hate anime girls!" Well, Surfshark VPN is about to scream PERSONA! And obliterate them like Satanyal did to the god of control. Simply change your virtual location to where the show is available and you can watch it. And by clicking the link down below and entering the promo code MANGA, you get 83% off and 3 months for free. And if you're not satisfied, Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. It's a real steal that no true phantom thief would pass up on. Or even some high schoolers in a small town looking for some extra pocket change. So what are you waiting for? Go click the link in the description. Please? I need the money for the hospital bills to survive that fall I took. Broke both my legs. Thanks, Adachi! It was a cold day in December. The snow was coming down, and I had gone out of class. I had a bad day with someone stealing stuff from me when I didn't notice, and I wanted to cool down at the local mall. So I checked out the game stores and came across a PS2 game that had a yellow cover. That, my friends, was Persona 4. It was an RPG that, up until this point, I never really thought about. I knew that games like Earthbound had a more modern feel to them, but there was something different about this game. Just looking at the cover, it just oozed style and grace, and it opened the door for me to several other types of games. It introduced me to a cast of characters that I still to this day respect and hold a place in my heart because of how real they were, and it was a story that really drew me into Japanese culture and got me to start learning more and more about it. What I'm saying is, I really love Persona 4, and I hold the game in great respect. So let's spend the next 20 minutes shitting on Golden, shall we?
You never see me
Whatever you say!
Alright, so I'm not going to blindly bash on the game. That's certainly not what the goal of this video is. If anything, I've got issues with Persona 4 Golden. Some because of the game itself, and some because of how Atlus loves to overmilk their cash cows. And some of these problems were still in the original Persona 4, so I might bring them up. It's happened with Persona 4, and it's certainly happening with Persona 5. And with the anniversary coming up, or if this video is not out on that day, with the prospects of Persona 6 slightly looming overhead, I think now is as good a time as any to talk about Persona 4 Golden. So get your pitchforks and get ready to skin me alive. Let's talk about Persona 4 Golden.
Also, this requires some understanding of the Persona series. I really don't want to hold your hand in this, so, yeah.
Spoilers. Incoming again, they are.
Originally titled Shin Megami Tensei Persona 4, the game came out in 2008. However, due to a short print run, a lot of people in the West weren't able to get their hands on it. But that didn't stop the popularity of the game reaching out. I remember back in the day watching old him-daisied comic dubs, as well as watching the multiple playthroughs on YouTube. I know this is going to sound a bit pretentious, but I like to think that if it wasn't for Persona 4, the Persona series probably wouldn't be as well known in the West as it is today. And it's not hard to see why. It was a stark difference from its predecessors. Like, if you look towards Persona 1 and how It was insanely mangled when it first appeared in the West, like for example, turning a Japanese kid black for no real reason.
Hey yo, when I come through up in the place, you don't want me to come with a gun in your face. I spit it harder than anybody in the world could do.
That
It's
shit
like I
sucks. Damn.
To Persona 2, which for all intents and purposes in the West was actually the second half of a duology that the West never got the first half until years later on the PSP. I blame the Fuhrer for this! Man, you couldn't get away with this today. I'm not even sure YouTube will allow me to show this. Then you got Persona 3, which was on the same console as P4, and how some people will argue that it is probably the best of the Persona series. It's fine to have that opinion, but know that I think you're just as crazy as the characters in the game who...
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Yappe.
Obviously, I am being tongue-in-cheek. I think all the Persona games have mostly positive traits to them, especially considering when they came out. But Persona 4 had a much different take on the pre-established formula, and took influence from Persona 3's modern urban setting to the philosophical mindfuckery and pretty smooth aesthetics. Seriously, just look at Persona 4's yellow and orange UI, it's just... oh, it's masterful. The only difference was that Persona 4 took a much more down-to-earth angle with its story, character, and themes. The basic theme was to talk about the lies that we ourselves tell us, and how we'll deny our true selves, and wrap it all up in a small-town murder story. Heck, despite that the game takes place in Japan with Japanese characters, the small-town setting that had certainly allowed the game's themes to really become relatable to a lot of people. Heck, I was really enamored with the game when I saw similar aspects happen to the small town that I was growing up in. I mean, there wasn't a murder mystery, but rather watching as my sleepy little town slowly eroded away as the small-time businesses were slowly being chased out because of big corporate overlords taking over. And it's a theme that also goes through the main party, and to a lesser extent, the side characters. I'm not saying that Persona 4 does this perfectly. Heck, some of the confidants kind of fly in the face of other themes that following your own heart. Like Yukiko's confidant has her trying new things, but then she does what's socially acceptable thing of inheriting the Amagi Inn from her family, even though her own dungeon was her being trapped in the town, being a literal bird in a cage. And if you're people who don't like to actually read, I suppose you could also throw kanji and Naruto in that, but I wouldn't. Back to Persona 4, sadly, during this time, Atlus was almost wiped out. Whoops! While Persona 4 was extremely popular in Japan and slowly getting more popular in the West, Atlus as a company was going through some very hard times, and they were doing a lot of what they could to remain afloat. Heck, if you do a comparison to Persona 3 and Persona 4, you'll find that a lot of data miners found that P4 was built upon the previous games. Sure, it would make sense since they share a lot of enemies and personas. Heck, you can even tie back the games all the way to Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, featuring...
What the hell is this?
And you'll find that the basic gameplay structure and even some of the models have been reused multiple times. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Heck, one of my newest favorite series, Yakuza, does this as well, and it's an encouraged practice. It saves time, money, and frankly I find it to be a rather piss-poor criticism of games if they reuse assets and animations. And it really denotes that people don't understand how game development works as well as how stressful game creation can get. Luckily, after some bullshit with Index, Atlus was actually able to be bought under Sega, and that's why you can play Persona 5 music and Yakuza Like a Dragon. So, wait, what was I talking about? Oh, right. Persona 4 Golden. Well, we will, but not yet. We gotta talk about anime. In 2011, Persona 4 the animation came out. And it was good. Like, really good. It's an adaptation of the game and it does a good job of being faithful to the story. With one notable exception.
Charlie bit me. What are you doing? You can't pee right here. It's someone's room. Narukami, will you please stop him?
Why would I do that?
The anime had a much more comedic tone to it. Now, I'm not saying that they lessened the serious moments of the game, because when the anime gets serious, it gets serious. And while I do have some issues with the anime, it does manage to hit the emotional notes pretty well. Really, a lot of my issues come from the fact that the anime had to compress a lot of what made Persona 4 good. You're taking an RPG that has hundreds of hours of content and cramming it in 24 episodes. You're gonna have to compress a lot of stuff. It's part of the reason why I don't trust live-action remakes from Netflix. Like Death Note, Cowboy Bebop, and One Piece. Oh god! What I'm getting at through with this tangent is that because of the anime, it opened up a new audience to the Persona series. the general anime watching audience. And hey, it actually worked. The anime was more than likely a lot of people's introductions to Persona. After all, the anime was incredibly popular and led to the multiple spin-offs of the original game. So when you're a big company that was on the verge of disappearing or being swallowed up by another company, you'll want to strike at that gold. Pun not intended. Liar! We got spin-off after spin-off after spin-off after spin-off, and you get the idea. Hell, if you ask some fans, this is when the Persona series took a shift. Heck, at even this point, Atlus acknowledged that by dropping the Shin Megami Tensei subtitle when it came to bringing up Persona 4 Golden. And you can still see this in Persona 5, and while I'll still maintain it's a good game, I'd be remiss if I didn't voice that it too had similar vibes to the Persona 4 anime. A lot more wacky anime tropes and gags. Hell, it wasn't until recently that Shin Megami Tensei came back on its own form. 5 looks awesome, by the way. But you can't deny that the main focus of Atlus was the Persona series, and for quite a while too.
Shut the f up and sleep.
However, there was a problem. Persona finally got noticed by the mainstream.
This is so much cancer that I can feel the tumors growing on my back.
I'm sure that a lot of people are going to argue that it can only be a good thing for the series to get popular, and that it saved Atlus to keep making more and more games. True, so true. Still, when something gets mainstream, it enters into a lot of issues, such as people trying to co-opt the series for their own agenda, demand changes to things, and bring in people who I question even actually played the game. Like, no joke, you can have your headcanons and interpretations of the characters, but I got really sick of hearing things like, Naoto is trans. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like Persona 4 had themes about how labels are pointless and that you should just be honest and be yourself instead of letting others' perceptions influence who you have to be. Oh, wait! Oh my god, people are still complaining about this. It's 2021. Why? The game came out over a decade ago. Why is this still being debated?
You're not gonna get that? Oh, yeah, right. Hello.
I wrote a blog post a while ago about why I hate video games. Because this is what it does. It appeals to, like, the male fantasy.
I think it's the dark side of the mainstream appeal, that you'll get people who will read way too much into the text and outright ignore the actual messages that the games are delivering. I believe some people refer to them as normies and how they'll ruin things, and frankly, in some cases I do have to agree. Normies will infect something and won't bother to actually respect the material, and unfortunately that can spread to the actual product in question. Golden is a remake of Persona 4. Duh. Originally released on the PlayStation Vita. Rest in peace, you brave soul. This wouldn't be the first time that Atlus released more content for one of their titles. Persona 3 meh. It too was an additional content boost, which unfortunately was more set for the endgame content, in the controversial The Answer section. However, Golden's new content was included throughout the main game. And unfortunately, that's kind of one of the problems that I have. You see, unlike Fess, yes, I'm gonna call it that, I don't care if it's called anything else, shut up, which you could easily skip the content, not in Golden, and not in Royal either, but at least in Royal, if you didn't want to access the third semester, you had the option of missing out on it. In Golden, well, you're at least pushed to interact with her and her endgame dungeon. I'm getting ahead of myself. Really, my issue with Golden starts with its tone, and it's a distinct change that you can tell right before the game actually starts. Pursuing My True Self is a song that really fits the tone and theme of the game. After all, the whole game is about being honest with yourself, and with the shadows of the characters starting off, it really sets with the players to experience the mystery of the game. And when we actually see the characters in the various video footage, we're given a small amount of clues as to what our main cast is like. The lyrics also play to the strength of the story as well. I guess what I'm saying is, I really prefer the original opening as it plays the story of the game. And it's really just a damn good song. Now, let's compare it to Golden's. The hell is this crap? Okay, I'm being a bit too mean here.
Miserable, mediocre nothing.
But this really changes the tone that I brought up earlier. While Shadow World's lyrics and themes do lend to the story's theme, there's something else here. A much more cheery tone. It doesn't really instill to me that I'm about to solve mysterious murders and deal with the supernatural world. It really comes off like I'm about to watch an anime with goofy hijinks. Like, I'm not saying that the theme is bad, but it really messes with the tone of the original game. Frankly, I wish that when Persona 4 Golden came out, there'd be a setting option that you could choose to have the original theme play when you open up the game after the first time. And it's not like Shadow World is completely removed from Golden, but you have to go out of your way to find the song. Heck, you can even say this is the same thing with the battle themes. Reach Out to the Truth is a very pulse-pounding battle theme, along with the lyrics, and fuck me this part! And for Golden's battle music, time to make history.
It's a war of there every day. You can't hide from me. You gotta pray for the rules.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Honestly, I like both battle themes, but I find Reach Out to the Truth to be much more related to the game's themes, not to mention I find it a lot catchier. Then again, this could be because I'm an old fossil who played the original game and I'm willing to admit that this is a preference, but you have to admit that Time to Make History has a livelier tone to it.
But Carmen, it's just a song choice, and like you said, it's a preference. Don't you think you're making it out to be a bit bigger issue than it actually is?
I'm glad I made that straw man because yes, it is a minor issue. Stuff like this is merely a preference, but I still maintain it's indicative of my issues with Golden, especially with the tone of the game. Besides, gather enough little things and eventually you're gonna have a pile.
That is one big pile of shit.
I don't think it's unfair for me to bring up the tone for the game, especially when the setting is what is the biggest issue I have with Golden. And that's really due to the addition of scenes like this. Now, contrary to what some people like to think, I'm not inherently against fan service. No, my real issue is the inclusion of such fan service that it's redundant. Like, it plays essentially like the previous hot spring scene that was in the original game, and it's still in Golden too. And it was done because it had to appeal to the anime normies. After all, gotta get that fan service in. Fan service in and of itself is not an issue. It is if its inclusion is detrimental to the story and themes of the game. And a scene like this by itself may not seem like it's all that terrible, but like I said before, the small things can build up, and there's a lot more to talk about. Like how these additions actually go against the small town tone that I brought up. Take for example the King's Game scene, where all the characters essentially get drunk off the atmosphere and act crazy. It was a small town scene to showcase that these small town kids wouldn't really experience something like this in Inaba. The flashing lights, the music, the completely different atmosphere, and oh wait! And now there's a nightclub in Inaba, which if you have shiny stones with ya, even a teenager can stay, and apparently purchase weapons? It disrupts the small town flow, and removes the isolationist and the big city life feel is included, when there's a place like that in the club. Now let me put it like this, my original love of the game is the characters and their issues, which is tied to the fact that a lot of them feel like they're trapped in their small town, away from the excitement from the outside world. So when you include elements of the outside world or a place like Okina City that's like a bike ride away, you remember how I pointed out the characters had a connection to the small town and how it was like they were trapped there? Well, it kinda kneecaps that tone and theme when you do this. Sure, you could go to Okina City in the original, but it was established to be hard to get to and was mostly just used for a backdrop of social links or whatever. But in Golden, it's used for fluff! Gotta appeal to the normie anime lovers by including more slice-of-life comedy bits and fan service that can now get me locked up. Hooray! If it were just one or two scenes, then hey, I'd be willing to admit that this is an issue for me and just a preference. But no, there are multiple scenes like this throughout the entire game. Now, one can easily argue that scenes like the idol concert or the ski trip do add to the characters. It fleshes them out and allows the party to hang out more outside of discussing the case. But as I said before, this redundancy hurts the themes of the game. This probably is just a difference in taste, but I find the addition of these scenes to kind of bloat down the main plot quite a bit. Not helped is that they've used tropes of anime and JRPGs that I've seen and experienced multiple times. Again, this is probably just the fossil in me speaking, but I don't like it. They don't really add anything to the story. The only ones that really do are the ones I already mentioned, but they also hurt the story. Like, the idol concert is really pointless, and it really hurts the isolation aspect when your entire cast is being cheered upon and performing concerts with a popular idol, to the point where, and as the game itself puts it, became legends among your peers. Ugh. Way to keep a low profile, investigation team, and it's because of that that it's used to show how the culprit, aka Adachi,
You never see it coming.
Killer Queen 第3の爆弾バイツァーダスト
Oh, I warned you about spoilers. Anyway, it's because the idol concert is how Adachi's figured out the investigation team was stopping his fun, but that makes no sense. There was already a suitable reason for why Adachi was able to figure out who was investigating the whole case and stopping people from dying, because even Dojima was able to figure it out. Dojima noticed that almost every person who went missing after the first 2 murder victims were specifically hanging out with his silver-haired nephew, and considering that Adachi was also with Dojima multiple times and saw the group hanging with each other as well, it's not that much of a stretch to consider that they have done the same thing. Hell, I'll say the concert actively hurts Adachi as an antagonist, since before he was able to figure out who was thwarting his fun and led credence to his abilities as a detective as well as his intelligence. Heck, the original game didn't outright tell you this. It actually allowed the players to put 2 and 2 together, and I think that's awesome. Again, probably the fact that I'm an old coot, but I like it when games don't actively spoon-feed you everything and allow players to come to these conclusions on their own, if you think about it. And Golden actively hurts that. Then again, just having a social link with Adachi does that too, but whatever. Back on point, these scenes actively hurt the story, themes, and even the characters. It also drastically hurts the pacing of the original game, since these scenes had to be shoved into what was already a pretty content-heavy game, not helped by the hours of tedium in between, but we'll get to that later. I may not like the opening portion where you basically do nothing, but there was a point to that. To push the idea that you're living out a year and life of your silent teenage protagonist, who's just moved to the sleepy village of Inaba out in the sticks where everything moves slower, but just because there's a point to something doesn't make it a good game designer choice. Here, when something exciting happens, it stands out all the more. But now you've got an exotic nightclub, we've got an idol concert on the rooftop of a department store, and you've got an emo tsundere walking around town leaving bad poetry slams all over the place, but we'll get to that later too! I'm more than likely in the minority in this, but adding so much more stuff to your already stuffed game does hurt it. And I'm willing to say that it's kind of the same with Persona 5 Royal, but I feel that game at least tried to incorporate these aspects a little better, and did some better things such as introducing some of the future party members a little earlier than they originally were. That doesn't say Persona 4's writing was spectacular, it had its weaker moments, most notably Teddie's moments. But at the very least, the core of Persona 4 was kept intact, and these scenes I feel actively hurt it.
It's game time!
Let's not beat around the bush. Golden has a ton of quality of life improvements to its gameplay. If you're strictly playing Persona 4 for a gameplay aspect, then I'd have to say Golden is probably your best bet. There are a variety of difficulties, even more on PC, since you can access them at the start and change them whenever you want. You can choose abilities for your personas when you fuse them. They added stuff like team attacks to the combat, cavalry attacks, lowered some of the spell costs, and much, much more.
What the fuck was that?
What? You read the title, Love and Hate. When it comes to the gameplay, Persona 4 Golden has definitely managed to step up from the original when it comes to combat. It's not as fleshed out as it is in Persona 5/Royal, but that's a given. Sequels always add stuff to them and build up upon them. However, and I suppose you can say that these are issues with the original base game that I have when it comes to gameplay, but I figure, hey, let's bring them up. I mean, at this point, I've already painted a bullseye on my back with the Persona fanbase, so might as well voice more unpopular opinions. I'm not really much of a fan of the slow opening of Persona 4, and the same with Golden. It's a massive hurdle for people who go through the 2 hours of setup, and no, walking through the town while Dojima is getting gas does not count as gameplay. It's something I will not budge on. I still have memories of me going, when do I get to the RPG? And it was still annoying. Like, say whatever you want about Persona 5, at least you can get into the battle system and it has a running start to the plot. Sure, the tutorial was there, but at least you're playing with the battle system not too far. Like I said before, there's a narrative reason for why the game starts off slow, but just because there's a reason for the slow opening, that doesn't mean I have to like it, nor does it mean that it can't be a chore for newer players to get past and get into the actual content. Then there's also the dungeon layout of Persona 4, something that was carried over into Golden, and how they were extremely long, tedious, and boring. Dungeons, for the most part, are randomly generated. This means that the layout of each floor and the monsters you find are placed when you enter the floor. There are some exceptions to this, but there are times when the dungeons were going on for way too long, and the hallways were usually the same design. It's something you can attribute to Persona 3 as well, maybe even worse, but I was never a fan of the approach of the dungeons. And again, I hate to bring up Persona 5, but while there was a cohesive theme to the dungeons, fuck it, Persona 5 did dungeons better, fight me.
Okay, it's worth it.
At least there was more stuff to do in the dungeons other than running around randomized halls, and each dungeon at least tried something different, and Royal fixed a few other issues. Heck, they even offered shortcuts and secret locations for items, like the will seeds in Royal encouraged the player to search around and find them to get bonus items. I'm doing way too many comparisons to Persona 5, I'll stop now. Basically, this added a lot of tedium to Persona 4's gameplay, and it's true of Golden as well. And not just in the dungeons, but also in the social links, which can come off as padding since they don't really have a connection to the main story. I will say Shuffle Time was greatly improved, and it does add a bit more variety than bare bones that Persona 4's had. Granted, I prefer the demon taming method from the other Persona games, but then again, that's just a preference, and for this system, it at least allows you to get bonuses. And I suppose I should bring up the last dungeon, the bonus you get in Golden, the Hollow Forest. I'll say this, I at least applaud the attempt to make a challenging dungeon. It removes all items and equipment from your characters, including the costumes. Until completion, your SP gets halved after every battle. Sounds challenging, right? Well, depends really, because along with the weapons and armor they are given, each character gets outfitted with an accessory that restores SP every turn, with better versions available in the dungeon. It kinda hurts the handicap that it's giving you. Some enemies, including the bosses, have a large amount of elemental resistances, requiring you to use the breaker items found in the dungeon to break their elemental resistances in order to do decent damage. Although, to be fair, the regular enemies tend to have weaknesses to pretty much almost all the elemental damages to them. At least the dungeon provides the tools for you, but you can really breeze through the dungeon if you know what you're doing and have the right setup. And, you know, aren't on easy mode. Like max Risei Social Link for charging MP, have Trumpeter or anything with a cool breeze for more MP, have characters that can break through elemental resistance with their own skills, have enough money to recharge your MP with the Fox once or twice. Like, if you have these, you can pretty easily get through a good chunk of the dungeon, and do kind of the same to the final boss. So to me, it comes off a bit of a slog of a dungeon that's more annoying than challenging. I don't know, I got mixed feelings about the battle system in Golden, but I will say it's a vast improvement over vanilla P4. The problem is with the balance, and that's something that I've been noticing in Persona games, and it's usually on the easier side of balance. And I suppose I should touch on the social aspect of the game, the social links. It's a good system that does actually tie into the party system, where the party members gain more abilities like, say...
Dude, I'm so excited about finding the murderer!
Let's be friends!
You became friends with Yosuke! Yosuke will now die for you!
Okay. And it's a good system to learn about your party, but there's a disconnect with the mainline story, and it's something you can say for all the Persona games that have this system in them, because there's usually no way for the developers to really know if your relationship with some characters will be at a certain point with the others, so it's hard to take that into account. Just felt like bringing it up. Although, we come to the biggest issue I have with Persona 4 Golden.
You're a basic bitch.
Marie is a terrible shoehorned-in character, and I don't feel bad for saying that. In Golden, there were two additional social links. One is Marie with the Aeon Arcana, and the other is Adachi with the Jester Arcana. Adachi's social link I'm also mixed on, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one thinking that, because while the social link does allow you to learn more about the character, it also pretty much telegraphs who the culprit is in the story. I know a lot of people happen to like Adachi, but I feel that if you're just getting into the game, it kinda gives away the major twist of the story. I mean, the only other way to make it more obvious is to have the guy start carrying hands and oh god, there's an actual Kira mod? As if there weren't already a ton of comparisons to Persona 4 and JoJo Part 4. But enough of me shilling JoJo into every video that I make nowadays. We're here to talk about the other social link, the Aeon, Marie. And she sticks out like a sore thumb and will be shoved down your throat. So slurp up your big gulps because we're gonna go epic gamer on this. If you're a fan of Marie, I'm about to say some mean things about a fictional character you may like, so allow me to put this in the nicest a way possible. Your virtual waifu doesn't love you. She lacks the ability to love you. I understand that 2D women are amazing, but if you're gonna act like a twat because what I have to say, you have a sad, miserable life. We good? Good! Marie is a brand new character solely introduced to Golden. In a sense, she's kinda like Kasumi or Maruki, although I do think there's a big difference between Marie and the other two. The later two's integration and designs fit a lot more naturally into Persona 5's story and setting. Not to mention, I feel as though the inclusion of these two characters in Persona 5's plot isn't as hammered in, which can be difficult considering that whenever I see characters like this put in, it's a bit messy since the original narrative wasn't built around them. and sometimes you'll get retcons that can mess with the story's plots and themes. And it's notable by simply looking at Marie's design. Not saying the design is bad itself, I certainly do appreciate it. I am what some people would consider an otaku, but the artist in me really has to say that she's overly designed, and she's just got a lot of design elements and colors that make her clash with the rest of the cast. I understand that's kind of the deal with people who are in the Velvet Room to stick out more, but that's the thing, even Marie stands out from them. Like, her most prominent color is white and black with red and blue, and maybe that's the point, but it really just sticks out more in my mind, and I don't think that's a good thing. Maybe if she was having blue where her red was, it still convey that she's different from the rest of the Velvet Room inhabitants since their primary colors are blue and black. You'd still have her stand out with her prominent color being white and blue and not have a messy design that sticks out way too much. And while good for her character design principles, she clashes heavily with the atmosphere that the game originally had. She comes off as if the design was to appeal to anime lovers. She's a tsundere, she has amnesia, she has a mysterious past, she has leggings, and she likes to annoy the living crap out of you with poetry. That's terrible! If you're playing Golden first instead of the original Persona 4, I can see why this wouldn't be a big deal because you wouldn't have experienced the tone and the atmosphere that the original game was trying to convey. But try to understand from my perspective that this edition does matter, especially considering that some people would consider Persona 4 already a bloated title that was barely on the cusp of running a bit too long. What doesn't help is that Marie is supplanted into the story like you'd fit a square peg into a round hole. And what's even weirder is that for the majority of the story's plot, she doesn't actually matter. At least not until the end. What doesn't help is the game is obviously trying to push the MC Marie together romantically. She's the first person outside your family you meet in your new town, you go on dates with her, and in the true ending, she declares her love to you. Like, it's such an obvious push that it sticks out to me. Let me woo the kung fu obsessed girl who likes steak and peace, or the detective prince that apparently people are still complaining about to this day and continue to misunderstand that her story was actually about her being disrespectful to the Japanese culture because of her gender. But much like that last sentence that plopped out of my mouth, there's more reasons for why I don't like Marie. Take her social link for example. It comes off as some of the most artificial writing in the entire game. In every single part of Marie's social link, you got a member or two of the investigation team hanging out as well. And for some reason, they quickly want to become friends with her.
Let's be friends!
The other members of the team seem to fawn over Marie while she just acts vaguely unpleasant to them for the most of the time. Like, the investigation team are nice, but they're not spineless, and these people want to be friends with her? Everyone talks about how much they like Marie, and there are lines that are added to mention inviting her to the group events inexplicably despite her not being part of the team, and I have to ask, why? Well, there is actually a reason for it. I don't like it, but there is a reason. You see, in order to make the emotional gut punch and the oh-so-amazing twist, which I'll get to, work at the end of the game, it'd be pretty weird to have the characters out of the blue care for Marie and try to convince her to come back home. So, in order to fix this, obviously you make it so the party aside from you spends time with Marie, which is completely unnecessary and actively hurts the characterization of our main cast. Like, you guys remember when I talked about Adachi and how the concert revelation actually hurt his characterization of being a smart villain just so the players wouldn't have to think? This is in a similar vein. After all, what has the party been doing for a majority of the game? They've been going into the TV to help people that they don't know all that well from a serial murderer. Why do they need the extra motivation when they're willing to go into the TV to chase after someone? Especially since at this point in the story, they would have been the giant eyeball from the other world, so the mystery of how people are still being pulled into the TV world would probably make them go, holy shit! It's not really necessary. Heck, you could have just had you convince the party that he knows that the person on the TV when they're on the ski trip and go save her. You have this very weird situation where you're trying to add a new character that has some significance to an already established story. There would have to be major revisions to a story in the calendar to fully integrate her into it, but they didn't or couldn't, and it really feels like it's like that. I don't know, for all I know, Marie was someone's waifu at Atlas and they want her in the game. They essentially made her a goddess that practically retconned the original game, and that's not hyperbole, they literally made her a goddess. Oh yeah, you know the original villains of Persona 4, Izanami, Amane no Sagiri, and Konira Sagiri?
Pretty sure you said two of those names wrong. It's Ame no Sagiri and Kuni no Sagiri, not Amane no and Konira. Food for thought.
Yeah, they get retconned because of Marie. Marie in her dungeon reveals that she's Kusumi no Okami. Basically, she works with Amane no Sagiri. This giant eyeball. She was sent to look at humanity and take all the fog with her, which would kill her. So in order to save her, you gotta beat her up. I love that logic. Anyway, I explain this not because it's a complaint, but because I have to say that after you beat the true final boss, surprise, asshole! It turns out Marie wasn't Kusumi no Okami. She was actually the real Izanami all along!
What a twist!
Yeah, it turns out Marie was the good part of Izanami that was cut out so she could perform her evil plan. And once you beat Izanami, the evil one, Marie sucks the evil part back in, and you'll never have to worry about her ever again! She's made so important to the plot that it basically recontextualized as being all about saving her in the end. Yeah, totally doesn't undercut the original ending when Izanami outright states that she'll leave humanity alone in recognition of your actions. Like, what's even the point of that line now? If Marie's just gonna suck in the bad mojo back into her, then that doesn't really matter that this bonehead's gonna leave you alone. Everything's great! Hell, there's even more for the epilogue of Golden. Instead of having that bittersweet ending where you're leaving your friends and family and hope that things are going to be okay, hey, don't worry about it, bruh! 1 year later, Inaba's doing great. The businesses are booming, Adachi's on good behavior in jail, and everyone in your party is doing great. And of course, gotta shoo in Marie! It's way too clean, and it kind of flies in the face of the original parts of Persona 4, where the whole idea was to confront the hidden side of humanity, and we get this fantasy ending right here where everything is gonna be okay. And what makes this all the more puzzling is that guess what? Even if you're romancing another girl in the game, you can still romance Marie and not have any actual consequences in the game. What also doesn't help is that Marie has essentially the only on-screen kiss in the game between lovers. And here's the thing, if you want the extra content at the end of the game, you have to complete Marie's social link. You want that bonus epilogue? Here you go! Hope you enjoy Maria's professing her love to you on the TV.
You suck. This is the part where you're supposed to laugh!
You stupid motherfucker!
Look, I know I've been pretty negative with this game, and I know that a lot of people enjoy this game greatly, and I enjoy it too, but Golden was when the shift happened with Persona. There's an obvious shift in writing style between Persona 4 and 5, and it's something that I'm sure a lot of people have noticed. In Golden, you get a lot more familiar anime tropes, slice-of-life sequences, and of course, an ambiguous happy ending thanks to the new character. I like Persona as a series, and even though I'm known as the one guy who made a video defending Persona 5 from some bad faith criticism against it, and I don't care if you agree with that criticism unless you can prove I'm wrong, I don't care. But my point is, there was a drastic change, and while I do like Persona 5, there was a shift in the writing style. Tropes were being more used, the philosophical tales within a grounded universe with the characters were being replaced. Also, there could be an appeal to the mainstream normies. There's a reason why Persona 5 is as popular as it is, and while I do enjoy the game, it's got its problems, and I certainly wouldn't call it the best RPG of all time. No, that's Final Fantasy IX, bitches! What's more, this has actually started to draw the attention of people who are only going to demand more and more changes to this series, and will eventually lose the things from what made this series amazing in the first place. Now I'm sad. Oh well. I'm MangaKamen, and remember to examine your fandom. Bye-bye. And before I go, guys, don't forget to check out Surfshark and check the link below, and use my promo code to get 83% off. Thanks again, guys.